The Great Peshtigo Fire, a real-life tragedy. On the night of October 8, 1871, as the entire nation focused on the Great Chicago Fire, another, far deadlier fire raged in the small town of Peshtigo, Wisconsin. The Peshtigo Fire remains one of the deadliest wildfires in U.S. history, claiming the lives of an estimated 1,500 to 2,500 people, a number far surpassing the loss of life in Chicago. Yet, it remains a largely overlooked tragedy, its devastating scope almost forgotten. That fateful evening, the air in Peshtigo was thick with the scent of burning wood, the wind picking up speed and fueling the flames. The region had been experiencing a severe drought, with weeks of dry conditions making the forests ripe for disaster. A small spark, likely from a lumber mill or nearby farm, ignited the surrounding forest. Within hours, the fire grew into a roaring inferno. The speed of the fire was unimaginable. Witnesses later described it as if the entire forest had exploded into flames. The fire's intensity was fueled by high winds and the dry conditions, turning the flames into an unstoppable force. The town of Peshtigo was quickly encircled by flames on all sides. As the fire approached, the people of Peshtigo had little time to react. In the heat of the moment, many tried to escape by heading toward the nearby Peshtigo River, hoping that the water would shield them from the inferno. But the fire didn't just burn the land, it burned the very air. The intense heat created what many described as fire tornadoes, twisting columns of flames that swept through the land with terrifying power. The temperature was so high that it caused metal to melt and trees to explode. Some survivors later described how they attempted to escape by diving into the river, but the heat from the fire was so intense that they could feel the water boiling around them. The flames swept across the riverbanks, forcing survivors to retreat deeper into the river, and even then, they could feel the heat searing them from the shore. The people trapped in Peshtigo were not only battling the flames but also thick smoke that made it impossible to see, creating a sense of suffocating panic. In some areas, entire homes were consumed by fire within minutes, their wooden structures crumbling to ash. The night sky was filled with a dark, swirling mass of smoke and embers, blocking out the stars and moon, and leaving the residents of the town in a surreal, fiery hell. The death toll from the fire was horrific, and many bodies were never recovered, as the intense heat had incinerated everything in its path. The survivors who managed to escape were left with nothing, no homes, no possessions, no loved ones. The fire caused destruction over a vast area, sweeping through more than 1,200 square miles of land. It became a scar on the land and on the memories of those who lived through it. In the aftermath, the response was slow, and the scale of the tragedy was not fully realized until weeks later. The people of Peshtigo, as well as nearby towns, were left to rebuild from the ashes. And yet, the story of the Peshtigo Fire was overshadowed by the more famous Chicago Fire, which took place on the same night. The survivors of Peshtigo, in many ways, were left to grieve in silence, their tragedy buried in the wake of a larger, more publicized disaster. To this day, the Peshtigo Fire serves as a haunting reminder of the destructive power of nature and the fragile lives that can be lost in the blink of an eye. The Great Peshtigo Fire of 1871, one of the deadliest wildfires in U.S. history, devastated Peshtigo, Wisconsin, killing around 1,500 people. Caused by dry conditions and strong winds, it spread rapidly, with survivors recounting intense heat and speed. In contrast, the Los Angeles fires, which have occurred repeatedly over the years, often result in widespread destruction but typically with lower fatalities due to urban preparedness and firefighting advancements. While both fires are marked by destructive force, the Peshtigo Fire remains a historical tragedy, whereas Los Angeles fires are more recent, ongoing crises, shaped by climate change and urban sprawl.